In the summer of 1879, a group of ranch workers laboring along the Sabino Valley reported something that left cattle drained of blood without any proper wounds behind. The incidents began with dead goats discovered standing upright, as if they had stopped mid-stride. Soon after, the horses started refusing to leave the stable once night fell, and men began finding 3 small puncture holes in places no animal's teeth could reach. By the time the ranch owner's nephew disappeared near Verde Creek, everyone knew better to ride the fence alone. What came back with him from that search would cause even the toughest vaqueros to give up night watch for the rest of their lives. Before we go on, be sure to leave a like and tell us where you're listening from. Thanks. I was 19 that summer, working the Calder Ranch about 40 miles west of San Marcos. The heat had baked the earth hard as steel and turned the grass a dull yellow-brown. Dust lifted with every footstep. The cattle stood in the small patches of shade the mesquite trees provided, too worn out to graze until sundown. We were a crew of 12 men handling 3,000 head across 16,000 acres, and that season pressed us harder than most. Elias Calder owned the land. He was 63, shaped like a fence post, with hands scarred from a lifetime of rope work. His son Daniel helped manage things, 26 and already carrying the same hard lines around his eyes. The foreman was a man called Reyes, raised in Mexico during his youth, who understood cattle better than any man I'd ever known. He never lifted his voice, but when he spoke, everyone paid attention. The regular hands were men I came to know well. Louis and Marco were brothers from Eagle Pass, both fast with their ropes and even faster with jokes when spirits were light. Hank Morrison had pale gray eyes and arms like oak trunks from years of wrestling steers. Caleb Frost, thin as wire, could trail a single cow through a dust storm. The black hand everyone called Delta could calm a horse better than anyone, speaking to him in tones so soft you could barely hear. Younger men rounded out the crew. Myself, Owen Harper from Missouri, and 2 boys named Raphael and Benito who had come north looking for work. We slept in a long adobe bunkhouse with thick walls that kept the cool morning air trapped until noon. Our days began before sunrise, saddling horses by lantern glow, riding out to check the herds while stars still hung overhead. The work was hard but honest, moving cattle to fresh grass, treating cuts and scrapes, pulling calves from muddy holes, repairing endless stretches of fence. At night, we gathered around the bunkhouse table playing cards or listening to Luis play his guitar while cicadas drummed in the darkness outside. The first sign of trouble came in late June. Hank found 3 goats dead near the eastern pasture, standing close together like they were still alive. Their eyes were open, with no blood on the ground. When he nudged one, it toppled over, stiff as wood. Reyes rode out to inspect them. He found 3 small holes in each goat's neck, set in a triangular pattern. The wounds were deep but narrow, no wider than a pencil. No tearing, no claw marks, no tracks except our own and the goats from the day before. "I've seen snake bites," Reyes said that evening. "This isn't that. I've seen cat kills, too. This isn't that either." Delta nodded slowly. "My grandmother back in Mississippi used to tell stories about things that lived on blood, said they came during dry years when the land was hurtin'." Hank spat tobacco juice into the dust. "That's old superstition." "Maybe," Delta said, "but those goats are still dead with no answer, and that's real enough. Mr. Calder ordered us to burn the bodies. The smoke rose black and smelled wrong, like metal mixed with rot. The horses strained against their reins and tried to pull away from the fire. That night, Owen thought he heard something moving across the bunkhouse roof. We all went still and listened, but heard nothing except the wind shaking the tin sheets. 3 days later, Marco found 2 calves dead the same way. Standing deaf, we started calling it, with perfect triangular wounds. No blood. This time there were tracks nearby, but they made no sense. Like a large dog walking upright, the front claws sunk deeper than they should have been. The spacing was wrong for any animal we knew. Reyes sent word to nearby ranches asking if they had lost stock. The Collins place 10 miles north had found dead goats. The Becker spread reported missing chickens, but no bodies. Calder rode into Castroville to speak with the sheriff. He returned saying the lawman had laughed at him, suggested we were letting coyotes scare us. Coyotes don't leave clean holes. Coyotes don't drain blood without spilling a drop. Coyotes don't make horses refuse to leave the stable. That marked the start of the second week of July. The horses would not go out after sunset, no matter how much we coaxed or threatened them. Even Delta, with his calm ways, couldn't persuade them. They pressed together in the stable, sweating and rolling their eyes whenever someone approached with a saddle after dark. We had to change our routine, drawing the herds closer before sundown, setting night watch on foot. The first night I drew watch, I stood near the main corral with my Winchester resting across my arms. The moon was new, leaving only starlight. Every sound made me turn. Cattle shifted uneasily. Somewhere in the darkness, a screech owl cried out, then cut off sharp like something had seized it mid-call. I walked the fence line, boots quiet on the hard earth, trying to see beyond the yellow circle of my lantern. Near midnight, I heard breathing that wasn't my own, low and wet like a dog panting, but deeper. It came from past the fence towards the brush. I lifted the lantern and rifled together. Yellow eyes reflected back. Too high for a coyote, too far apart for a cat. They stayed fixed, unblinking. I counted 10 breaths before they slid sideways and vanished. No footsteps, no brush stirring, just there, then gone. When Frost relieved me at 2, I told him about the eyes. He nodded like he'd been expecting it. Been feeling something watching us, makes the skin crawl. By mid-July, we had lost 12 goats, 6 calves, and 2 pregnant cows. Always the same triangular wounds, always drained. Mr. Calder was losing money and patience alike. He put up a $50 bounty for whatever was killing his stock. That was 2 months' wages. It made us brave and foolish in equal parts. Reyes organized hunting parties. 3 men would ride out at dusk, rifles loaded, searching brush and creek beds. I rode with Hank and Raphael the first night. We tied our horses at Sabino Creek and walked the banks looking for tracks. The water ran low from the drought, exposing long stretches of sand and stone. Hank carried a bullseye lantern that threw a strong beam. Raphael kept his hand on his pistol like it might leap from the holster. We found tracks 2 hours in, the same wrong prints as before, but fresh. They followed the creek north towards a stand of old cottonwoods. Hank wanted to follow. Raphael wanted to turn back. I cast the deciding vote to keep going, though my mouth had gone dry. The cottonwood grove loomed dark against the stars. Something had been living there. The ground was worn smooth in a rough circle. Bones lay scattered, mostly small animals picked clean and white. But near the base of the largest tree, we found something that made Hank curse and Raphael cross himself. A cow skull with 3 neat holes punched through the top, set in that same triangular pattern. No tool does that, Hank said quietly. No predator either. A branch cracked above us.
We looked up and saw movement in the canopy, a shadow slipping between the branches with far too much ease for something that large. Hank swung the lantern upward. For a single second, I saw it clearly. Gray-green skin stretched tight over a lean body. Arms too long ended in hands that were not quite hands. The face was the worst part. Almost human in shape, but wrong in every proportion, with eyes that caught the light like a cat's and a mouth that opened far too wide, revealing needle-like teeth in 3 rows. It dropped straight down nearly 20 feet and landed without a sound. Raphael fired wildly and missed. Hank tried to bring his rifle up, but it moved faster than anything should, crossing 10 yards in a heartbeat. It struck Hank with one of those long arms and sent him rolling. His lantern shattered on a stone and went dark. In the blackness, I heard Raphael praying in Spanish, heard Hank groaning as he tried to rise. I fired toward the sound of breathing, worked the lever, and fired again. The muzzle flash gave brief glimpses. It crouched like a man but moved like a spider, circling us. My third shot may have clipped it because it made a sound like steam hissing from a kettle. Then there was nothing, silence except for our own rough breathing. We stayed back to back until dawn, when we could finally see that it was gone. Hank had 3 deep puncture wounds in his shoulder, already swelling purple and black. We lifted him onto a horse and got him back to the ranch. Mr. Calder sent for a doctor from Casterville. The man cleaned and dressed the wounds, but said he had never seen injuries like them. The punctures went deep, yet had barely bled. Hank developed a fever that night. He babbled about eyes in the dark and voices that were not quite words. The fever broke after 3 days, but Hank never fully recovered. His left arm remained weak. He jumped at shadows. A month later, he took his pay and left for Houston without saying goodbye. Daniel Calder began riding with us after that. He was a steady shot and clear-headed, but I saw fear in him too. We all had it by then. The thing had revealed itself. It was real and could be hurt, but it was not easily killed. The attacks on livestock continued. Every few nights, something else was found drained. Once we discovered prints on the bunkhouse wall, like it had climbed up to peer through the windows while we slept. Luis started hanging crosses above his bunk. Delta drew symbols in the dirt that he said his grandmother had taught him. Even men who hadn't prayed since childhood found themselves whispering to God when the sun went down. Mr. Calder sent to San Marcos for more ammunition and to Austin for news of similar attacks. The ammunition arrived. Information did not. Late July brought the worst heat. The creek shrank to a trickle. Cattle began dying from drought stress, making it harder to tell which deaths were natural and which were not. We dug 3 wells, but only one produced water. Tempers grew short. Arguments broke out over nothing. Card games ended in shoving matches. Reyes had to separate Marco and Owen when they nearly drew knives over whose turn it was to ride drag. On July 30th, everything changed. Daniel Calder and Benito rode out to check the northeast section where we had moved the yearlings. They were supposed to be back by sunset. When full dark came with no sign of them, Reyes sent out search parties. I rode with Frost and Delta, following the trail by lantern light. We found their horses 2 miles from the yearling pen, tied to a mesquite tree, nervous but unharmed. Boot tracks led toward the creek bed. Only one set came back. We found Benito sitting against a boulder, alive but altered. His eyes stared at nothing. His hands shook constantly. 3 puncture wounds marked his neck, but they were shallow, not fully driven in. When we tried to move him, he began screaming about a voice in the ground, about how it knew his mother's name, about Daniel going to see what was calling to him. We searched until dawn. There was no sign of Daniel Calder except his hat drifting in a pool where the creek curved. The water was dark and motionless. When Frost prodded it with a stick, we saw it wasn't water at all, but blood, thick and half set in the heat. Too much blood for one man, too much blood for 3 men, yet no body, no tracks leading away. Mr. Calder seemed to age 10 years that day. His son was gone. The thing that hunted his land had taken his boy. He sent word to Fort Sam Houston asking for soldiers. They replied that they didn't chase fairy stories. He offered $500 to anyone who would track and kill the creature. No one in Casterville or San Antonio would accept once they heard the details. We pulled back, abandoning the outer sections of the ranch. All stock was moved to the pastures nearest the main buildings. No one rode alone anymore. No one worked after dark. But it wasn't enough. The thing grew bolder. We found it had entered the smokehouse and taken preserved meat. It killed 2 dogs and left them hanging from the barn rafters. It walked the roof at night, scraping the tin with those long claws. Raphael quit first, leaving in daylight without asking for his wages. Owen left 2 days later. The Calder Ranch, which had run smooth for 15 years, was coming apart. The remaining hands barely spoke.
We did only the most necessary work. The cattle grew half wild from neglect. Fences went unrepaired. August 10th was when I saw it most clearly. I was pouring water from the well near the trough near sunset. The horses were already locked in the stable, stamping and snorting. I turned with the empty bucket, and there it stood, 30 feet away, watching me. In the evening light, I could make out details that still visit me in dreams. Its skin wasn't gray-green everywhere. The chest and throat were paler, almost translucent with dark veins visible beneath. The arms hung past its knees, double-jointed in ways that let them bend wrong. The hands had 4 fingers and a thumb, but they were too long, with too many knuckles. The face was the worst part, almost human in shape, but wrong in every proportion, with eyes that caught the light like a cat's and a mouth that opened far too wide, revealing needle-like teeth in 3 rows. It tilted its head and spoke, not words exactly, but sounds that were nearly words, like someone talking underwater or through mud. I heard my own name in 'em, stretched and wrong. I heard other things too, bits of conversations from the bunkhouse, fragments of songs Luis played, the prayer Delta whispered at night. It had been listening to us, learning us. I dropped the bucket and backed toward the door, my rifle too far away to reach. It took 1 step forward, then stopped. Its head turned toward the stable. The horses were going mad, kicking their stalls, screaming. That saved me. It wanted the horses more than it wanted me in that moment. It moved toward the stable in that horrible, spider-quick way. I ran for the bunkhouse and slammed the door. That night we'd barricaded everything, shoved the heavy table against the bunkhouse door, nailed boards over the windows. Calder, Reyes, Frost, Delta, Luis, Marco, and me. 7 men left out of 12. We sat with guns loaded, listening to it move outside. It tried the door, rattling the handle with slow patience. It tapped along the walls in different spots, like it was testing for weakness.
Then it began calling out, first in Daniel's voice, asking his father to let him inside, saying he was hurt and needed help. Mr. Calder put his head in his hands and did not move. Then it spoke in Hank's voice, saying he had come back, that he had forgotten something. After that came voices we didn't recognize, speaking languages none of us understood. The horses screamed until their throats gave out. A cow bawled once and then went silent. Near dawn, everything stopped. We waited until full daylight before stepping outside. The stable doors were standing open. 3 horses were gone. We found them 100 yards away, standing together, drained. The same triangular wounds, but something else as well. Symbols scratched into the dirt around them, patterns that hurt to look at, like they were trying to mean something our minds refused to accept. "We leave," Reyes said. "All of us, now." Mr. Calder shook his head. "This is my land. My son is out there." "Your son is gone," Reyes said. Not cruel, just firm. "This thing is getting stronger, learning more. We stay, we die." Frost agreed. "I've worked cattle 30 years, never ran from anything, but this isn't natural. This is something else." We argued through the morning. Mr. Calder refused to abandon the ranch. The rest of us refused to stay another night. At last, Reyes offered a compromise. We would ride to Castroville, gather more men, and come back with a proper hunting party. Numbers might make the difference. Mr. Calder agreed only because he had no choice. He couldn't hold the ranch alone. We saddled the remaining horses at noon, loaded a pack mule with ammunition and 3 days' worth of food. The plan was to ride hard for Castroville, raise a posse, and return within the week. As we were mounting up, Benito spoke for the first time since we'd found him. He had been sitting silent in the corner of the bunkhouse, staring at nothing. "It's not done feeding," he said. His voice sounded raw. "It told me while it drank. It needs more before it can molt, before it can become what it's meant to be." We left him there. He wouldn't come, wouldn't move from his corner.
Mr. Calder gave him a pistol and a week of food. I don't know whether that was mercy or cruelty. The ride to Castroville should have taken 8 hours. It took 14. The horses fought us, trying to turn back, shying at things we couldn't see. Twice we spotted dust clouds behind us, like something was following. We stopped only to water the horses, rifles ready, eyes on the brush. As the sun dropped low, still 5 miles from town, Frost's horse stepped in a hole and went down hard. The legs snapped clean. Frost jumped clear, but the horse screamed and thrashed. While Reyes put it down, I saw movement on the ridge beside us. That long shape cut against the sky, watching. It could have taken us then. We were spread out, worn down, half our horses close to collapsing, but it only watched. We walked the last miles, leading the horses, reaching Castroville after midnight. The sheriff wouldn't see us until morning. When he did, when we told our story, he threatened to jail us for drunken and disorderly. Only Mr. Calder's name and money kept us free. The sheriff refused to raise a posse from Mexican folklore and heat sickness. The priest at the Spanish mission listened more closely, but said only that evil wore many faces and faith was our shield. We bought supplies and ammunition with Mr. Calder's money. We found 3 men willing to ride back with us for the promise of pay. 2 Buffalo soldiers on leave, Johnson and Smith, and a bounty hunter named Wallace, who claimed he'd killed stranger things than what we described. I doubted that, but we needed the numbers. The ride back took 2 days. We moved carefully, scouts ahead and behind, camping in open ground where nothing could approach unseen. The Buffalo soldiers, Johnson and Smith, knew their work. They set a watch pattern that covered every angle. Wallace cleaned his guns over and over and told stories about hunting Apache that might have been true. None of it made me feel any safer. We smelled the ranch before we saw it. Death and smoke carried on the wind. The main house still stood, but it was empty. The bunkhouse door hung loose on its hinges. Dark stains coated the porch, marks that rain would never wash away. We found Benito in the corner where we had left him. He had used the pistol, but not on himself. 6 shots were fired into the walls around him. Claw marks scored every surface within arm's reach. He was drained like the others, but something else had happened too. The skin on his arms and chest bore patterns like burns, symbols that matched what we had seen scratched into the dirt. Mr. Calder walked through his house calling Daniel's name until Reyes stopped him. The creature had been inside. Furniture lay overturned, pictures ripped from the walls, deep gouges carved into the wood. In Mr. Calder's study, we found his ledgers torn apart and laid out in a circle. In the center, Daniel's clothes were folded neatly, as if set out for church. It's showing us it can think, can plan. This isn't just an animal, Wallace spat. Everything dies if you shoot it enough. That night we camped in the open, well away from any buildings. We posted 4 guards and built fires in a ring around us. Nothing came, but we heard it calling from different directions. Daniel's voice from the north, Hank's from the south, Benito's from the west, and from the east a sound that wasn't a voice at all, but something older, like wind moving through a cave that had never known light. At dawn, Mr. Calder was gone. His bedroll lay empty. His boots were placed neatly beside it. No tracks, no blood, no sign of a struggle. He had simply ceased to be there. Reyes found a note tucked inside one boot. Mr. Calder's handwriting, but shaky. It said Daniel was alive. I choose to believe. We searched until noon and found nothing. The Buffalo soldiers wanted to leave. Wallace wanted his payment first. Reyes stood at the ranch gate, looking out over land he had worked for 20 years. At last he said what we all knew. The ranch was lost. The thing had won. As we packed to leave for the final time, Delta stopped short. He said, "Listen." We heard horses, many horses, moving fast from the south. A dust cloud rose on the horizon. We prepared for a fight, not knowing if riders or something worse was coming. It was the Texas Rangers. 8 of them, led by a captain named Ford with gray hair and scars on both hands. The sheriff in Castroville had finally decided we weren't drunk after all. Too many other ranches reporting losses, too many people missing. Ford listened to our account without showing anything, then sent 2 men to scout the land. They returned pale. They had found the yearling pen. 40 head of cattle stood arranged in neat rows, all drained, all upright, positioned in a pattern that formed a symbol visible only from above. In the center lay pieces of something that wasn't quite skin and wasn't quite hide, like a snake's shed, but thicker, the size of a man, still wet with fluids that burned to the touch. It molted, Frost said quietly. Like Benito said, it became what it was meant to be. Ford ordered everything burned, every building, every carcass, every trace. We spent 2 days cutting a fire break, then set the Calder Ranch ablaze. The smoke turned black and rose straight into the still air. As the flames peaked, we heard screaming from within the smoke, not human, not animal, something in between. The rangers escorted us back to Castroville, took our statements, and told us firmly that what we'd seen was a disease-maddened bear or a pack of wild dogs. The official report would say as much. They paid us the wages we were owed from Mr. Calder's account and advised us to find work far from Medina County. I left Texas that month, went north to Kansas, then Colorado. I worked cattle another 40 years, but never again in Texas. Frost went to California. Delta vanished entirely. The others scattered to wherever men go when they're trying to forget something. But forgetting proved impossible. I still dream about those backward bent legs and the 2 long arms. I wake to the sound of my own name spoken in that underwater voice. When I read in newspapers about mysterious livestock deaths, about ranchers finding their herds drained of blood, I know it didn't die in that fire. It finished becoming. Reyes wrote to me once, 10 years later. He had gone back to the Calder land out of curiosity. The ground was still black from the burn. Nothing grew there, but near the creek he found tracks, fresh ones, with that same wrong gait, that same deep claw. Scratched into the sand beside them was a message, or maybe a warning. I remember your names. I'm an old man now. My hands shake from age, not fear. I have told this story to my children, and they smiled as if I were spinning tall tales. But I know what I saw in the summer of 1879. I know what stalked us through drought and heat. I know what took Daniel Calder and his father and Benito. It is still out there. When ranch hands vanish in Texas and Mexico, when cattle turn up drained with triangular wounds, when horses refuse to leave their stables after dark, I know it is still feeding, still learning, still becoming something worse. The rangers were wrong about one thing. It was never